Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another tutorial brought to you courtesy of the good people of Forme Bespoke. If you've not already done that, go ahead and give us a like and a subscription. Subscribe to the channel and then click the notification button so that you are notified each time we post new material. Let's get right into the meat of today's discussion: designing the pattern of a simple derby shoe. First thing, of course, you need to draw a pattern. To do that, you have to tape up your last, get the center line which divides the last into two from front to back, and then locate the ball grit, which is the widest point on the last when you lie it on a flat surface, on the left side and on the right side. If you connect those 2 points, you get what is called the vamp line, and the point where the vamp line intersects with the center line in front is called the vamp point. Pay attention to that. Then you calculate what is called the standard last length. You measure it from the back of the last to the tip of the last. On this last is 22.5 cm. If you find 20% of that standard last length and measure that distance, 20% of your standard last length from the center line at the back, from the down part towards the top, you get what is called the counterpoint at the back. So pay attention, your counterpoint is 1/5, 20% of your standard last length. Then you find you divide your vamp line on the right side of the shoe into two. You measure it and divide it into two, and then connect that point you marked as your counterpoint from the back there to that middle point on your vamp line. When you do that, you generate another line called the quarter line. Now, the quarter line is important because it helps us calculate another line, another point on the last, which is called the instep height. The position where you start calculating your instep height is 3/4 of the quarter line. So you divide your quarter line into 4, and then the third of them, the 3/4 point, is where you start. So I measure this quarter line, it gives me 15 cm. Then 3/4 of 15 will give me like 10.5, I think so. So I measure out 10.5 on the quarter line, mark that point, and then draw a right angle from that point towards the center line in front of the shoe. The point where that right angle line intersects with the center line is your instep height. Then you add 1 cm from the counterpoint, add 1 cm to your counterpoint, and then join that. When you add 1 cm to your counterpoint, it gives you the heel height, which is actually where the back of the shoe starts. If you draw a line from that heel height towards your quarter line and then connect it in a curve to your heel height, you get the opening of the shoe, which is where your leg slips into the shoe. So let's revise what we've done. We calculated our counterpoint, which is 1/5 of our standard last length. Then we added 1 cm to that counterpoint to give us our heel height. We calculated our quarter line by connecting the counterpoint to the midsection of the vamp line. Okay, let's talk about derbies and Oxfords right now. A derby is a shoe, or let's start with an Oxford. An Oxford, the facings, which is where the lace is, gets tucked right into the vamp, whereas on a derby, it's located as a flap that is on top of the vamp itself. So take a good look at these two pictures and you see what I mean, and pay attention to that because it will we'll factor that in when we are designing this shoe, which is what we are doing at the moment. So I'm going ahead to design the the wingtip derby shoe. You could use any reference material you find online, or you could design from your head, or give yourself reference, something that you've designed before. Any of those are okay. I'm just designing this straight from my head. So when you're satisfied with the design that you have, you peel off the tape and do the best that you can to lie it flat on a flat surface. Then you add about 1 inch to the underside of your pattern, which is called the feather edge, and then trim everything out nice and dandy, making sure that all of the points that we calculated are well represented on your last. By those points, I mean the cardinal point, your counterpoint, your heel height, your instep height. Now, if you were going to do this on your own, I would recommend that you tape both parts of your last so that you could have all of those points that I talked about earlier represented on both the inner side of the tape that you have on the outer side. But I didn't do that because I was trying to economize my masking tape. So I'm going to do that by using paper. So simply what I did was since I have the outside part of my last, I just flip it over and just double it up, generate 2 of it. So simply what I'm going to do is to combine those 2 outside points that I have, tape them up like so around the center lines at the back, tape them up and join them together, and I'll have something that looks like a sock which I can wear back on the last and generate an accurate representation of the inner side. Notice that I did not just use the outer part and assume that it is the same dimensions with the inner part. It is not. Meanwhile, this outer and inner part that I've been talking about, the technical name for them are, the outer part is called the lateral side and the inner part is called the medial side. So having generated that sock or stockings, if you may, I wear it on the last, tape it up together, and just use just a few rolls of masking tape to secure it in place. Then once you have done that, the next thing you need to do is to just do exactly the same thing we did when we started. Generate all of those points. So I'm generating the ball grid. You connect the ball grid together to get your vamp line. You generate your center line. The point where your center line and your vamp line meets will be your vamp line. You calculate every single one of those points, your counterpoint, your instep height, your heel height. Just locate all of those things on this piece of paper and then cut the pieces out together like so. When I cut them out together like so, I have generated both the inner and the outer part of the last. So both the lateral side, which I'm labeling it accordingly, and the medial side. Having done that, you're almost on your way to celebration. You generate what is called the mean form. Remember, we designed our shoe on the outside part. But since the shoe that we have is not just the dimensions, you have to factor in the dimension of the inside part. So you trace out both inside on a piece of paper and then connect the points where your heel height and your counterpoint and your instep point meet, and then trace out the inner side onto the same or equivalent positions where you traced the outer point. When you remove it, you find that the 2 of them don't lie on exact positions. So at some point one is higher than the other, at some point one is much more forward than the other. Your job at the moment would just simply be to find the middle positions. Just divide the differences into 2. So when you divide the differences between the 2 of them into 2, that difference, that dividing line will be your mean form or your average point. So simply generating the mean form means finding the average between the inner and the outer part so that we can have a much more accurate representation of the last. Nothing tilts too much towards the inside and then nothing tilts too much towards the outside. So when you generate that mean form, next thing you're going to do is to transfer the design that we already did when we started onto the mean form to generate our pattern pieces. So that's basically what you need to do when you're starting out. So this is the probably one of the most important things you need to do when you're generating shoe patterns. It's the boring part, but it is the most important thing you need to do, creating the mean form. So try out what you've seen, what you've done, and let me know how far along you came. I guess what remains to be said is thank you for watching.